Good afternoon. Welcome to the City Club Forum. I'm Nelson Weiss, President of the City Club of Cleveland, now in its 71st successful year as a citadel of free speech and a center for open and responsible discussion and debate. Today we welcome Judy Goldsmith, President of the National Organization for Women, NOW. Ms. Goldsmith was elected president in October of 1982. After serving NOW in many capacities over the years, including the office of National Executive Vice President, which she held for 5 years just prior to her election as president. As Executive Vice President, she held the chief responsibility for the major day-to-day administrative functions of the organization. Today, Ms. Goldsmith heads the nation's largest organization dedicated to the advancement of women's rights, an entity comprising 240,000 members in more than 800 chapters in all of the 50 states. Ms. Goldsmith is a former professor of English literature, having taught for 15 years, first at the State University of New York at Buffalo, and then at the University of Wisconsin. A native of Wisconsin, Ms. Goldsmith won a scholarship to the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee, and she later received a fellowship to the State University of New York at Buffalo, where she earned her master's degree in English. Long active in the women's rights movement, she has frequently acted as a spokesperson for NOW on hundreds of radio and TV talk shows, and has testified before Congress on behalf of her organization. Among a variety of women-related goals and objectives, NOW remains committed to ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. In furtherance of this goal, NOW, under Ms. Goldsmith's leadership, plans to increase its political strength and women's direct participation in Congress and state legislatures as a way of laying the groundwork for another ERA ratification effort. It is with great pleasure that we welcome to our City Club Forum platform Judy Goldsmith, President of the National Organization for Women. Ms. Goldsmith.
Thank you. In 1920, after a hard-fought 72-year struggle, the suffrage movement was victorious in winning the vote for the women of this nation. In 1982, headlines in the major print media would have done the suffragists' heart good. Gender gap, new factor at the polls. Male-female split on politics found decisive in some races. More women leap into electoral politics. Dramatic differences recorded in male-female voting patterns. Candidates beginning to court women. Women push for more clout in politics. Power brokers, women assuming new political roles. Women get set for hardball campaigns. Women in politics, the gender gap. It has taken 60 years, but American women are finally making full use of the legacy left us by those gallant women. Women today are attacking sex discrimination in the most direct possible way by becoming fully and centrally involved in the political processes of this nation. What motivated this remarkable development? What caused it to happen suddenly, 62 years after women won the right to vote? Back in the early part of this century, there were those who opposed suffrage because they feared that women would use the vote in their own interest. For example, to improve the wretched conditions of women in the workplace at that time. But there were also those who said, don't worry, women will simply duplicate their husbands' votes. They are the ones who, generally speaking, turned out to be right. In the intervening years, sex discrimination continued rampant in this country, and the high cost of it was paid by women in lower wages, in limited employment and promotional opportunities, in restricted access to education, in credit, in Social Security, in insurance, sometimes by law, sometimes more subtly through prejudicial attitudes, up to and including the present day. But along the way, we have made some progress. A renewed women's movement in the late 1960s began organizing and taking action to undo the inequities that were plaguing women. We fought and we won Title IX, fought for Title IX and won it. Title IX, which provided some protections against discrimination in education, which required that males and females be equitably treated in academic pursuits, in the classroom, in career counseling, in sports and physical fitness programs. We won Title VII, and with it a considerable measure of protection against employment discrimination. We won affirmative action, a system which has opened doors to women and minorities that had long been closed to us by prejudice. We won the Equal Credit Act and the Women's Educational Equity Act. We made some gains. However, there were still serious problems. There were weaknesses in some of the laws. Sometimes there were backlogs of litigation so severe that only the hardiest and most determined could pursue discrimination cases. Sometimes the courts waffled on whether discrimination was illegal or not. Sometimes administrations didn't enforce the laws. Sometimes the laws were simply evaded. And when we analyzed the situation of women in the 1970s, we found that their situation was not significantly improved. In fact, the wage gap, the ratio of women's wages to men's, had gotten worse. While women had made 67 cents in 1957 for every dollar men made working full-time, in the late 1970s it had dropped to 59 cents. For minority women it is even worse, at 56 cents. Furthermore, the phenomenon that has come to be known as the feminization of poverty was becoming more apparent and increasingly a matter for concern. What we needed, what we lacked, was to have the principle built into the bedrock of the Constitution that discrimination on the basis of sex is unacceptable under our laws. The suffragists had known that too, and a few of the more far-sighted of them introduced the Equal Rights Amendment in Congress in 1923. Every year after that, it was introduced, and every year rejected, until the new women's movement of the late 1970s perceived its importance and began to organize for its passage. They understood, as had the women who introduced it in 1923, that no real or lasting gains for women could be made unless the Constitution, the ultimate legal standard against which all of our laws are finally tested, clearly stated that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. The Equal Rights Amendment was passed by Congress in 1972 and submitted to the states for ratification, and thus began a campaign and a learning experience that we will never forget. Initially, I think we may have been naive, believing the amendment to be fair, reasonable, right, just, and as American as the principle of democracy itself, we could not imagine that it couldn't pass. However, as opposition developed and solidified, we became increasingly more aware of political realities. We began to incorporate electoral strategies. We organized the vast grassroots support for the Equal Rights Amendment. We became skilled fundraisers and developed an effective media advertising campaign. Millions of letters from constituents were sent to legislators in the last year or two of the ERA campaign. Countless thousands of supporters made personal visits to their legislators to express their determination to have the ERA. Hundreds of thousands of supporters marched for it and supported it, often with money they couldn't afford from limited incomes. 2/3 of the American public wanted the Equal Rights Amendment. They should have gotten it. What happened on June 30th of last year was not the defeat of the ERA. It was the failure of the democratic system that this nation would not, in 1982, provide the constitutional legal equality that women deserved as a part of their birthright. As a result of the vast effort that went into the ERA campaign, and its rejection by a handful of state legislators in a few states, many women made some significant decisions. They decided that the political decision-making bodies in this country were not representative of them, that with women represented in barely token numbers, a female perspective was simply not adequately represented. They determined, too, that what happened in 1982 would never happen again, and the operative phrase became, "We'll remember in November." It first occurred in the North Carolina legislative halls when the amendment was defeated by that body. And there were people in the State House that day who said that the building reverberated with the shouts of women saying, "We'll remember in November." The phrase has since been expanded to, "We'll remember each November." What happened to the ERA was not, of course, the only motivation for women's increased political involvement, but it intensified it, increased it, and focused it as perhaps nothing else could have. The 1982 elections are now history, but they are remarkable for providing the first comprehensive evidence of the gender gap, the difference in voting patterns between men and women. Although it first manifested itself in 1980 in an 8-point spread between male and female support for Ronald Reagan, with 8% less support from women. 1982 was the first year that it was really evident on a massive nationwide scale. It has since transferred to a widespread disaffection with Republicans, not because women are inherently anti-Republican, but because women have perceived Republicans as acting contrary to women's interests. Republicans repudiated the Equal Rights Amendment in their 1980 party platform. 75% of Republican state legislators voted against the Equal Rights Amendment, while a majority of Democrats voted for it. And Republicans in North Carolina and Oklahoma block voted against the amendment. The Republican Reagan administration has led an ongoing assault against Title IX, Title VII affirmative action. It has offered federal budgets that have cut back or cut out vital human services programs for the poor, the majority of whom are women. The gender gap is directly related to those realities. Yet it is important also to understand that the gender gap is not in any party's pocket. As we frequently point out, women were not born Republican, Democrat, or yesterday. And a detailed analysis of the 1982 elections will show that the women's vote is a highly sophisticated and independent voting bloc which can and will move to wherever support for equality manifests itself. But the most exciting and the most significant development is the new and determined full involvement of women in the political process. With some notable exceptions, never before in the past have women played more than a sporadic sidelines role in politics, the supporters, the envelope stuffers, the cheerleaders. The object lesson that the ERA taught us was that if we are not there, centrally involved in the political decision-making process, our issues will not receive the full and fair consideration they need. That realization has opened the door to a new era, one that will see increasing numbers of women as candidates, as campaign managers, as fundraisers, as a newly informed, highly motivated, and organized electorate. It isn't, of course, that we've never been involved before, but never before has that involvement been so extensive and so consciously coordinated. What will this phenomenon mean to the nation? Its implications are powerfully positive. First of all, as a democracy, we can only benefit from the increased active involvement of our citizens. Second, the state legislatures and Congress will be more effectively representative if women as well as men are there in fairly balanced numbers. There can be no question that women will benefit if the laws that affect us are made by women as well as by men. The extent to which women understand that is reflected in the 1982 elections. A slogan popularized in the course of those election campaigns was, "It's a man's world unless women vote." Needless to say, at least I hope I don't have to say, that does not mean that we're looking for a woman's world. We're simply looking for a world where women's particular interests are represented and our problems adequately addressed. That means that we would address the problems of pay inequities and the fact that not only is there a wage gap, but that the gap between men's and women's wages persists in every single major occupational category in the country, whether that occupation is numerically dominated by or traditionally defined as women's work. If men are in an occupational category, they make more than women. We have to address the problem that a young woman getting a college degree today still cannot expect to make more on the average than a male 8th grade dropout. We have to address the problem that because of inequities built into the Social Security and pension systems, most elderly women in America are condemned to lives of unrelieved poverty, a situation that is nothing short of a national shame. We have to address the problem of sex discrimination in insurance that costs the average woman in increased costs and reduced benefits approximately $16,000 over the course of her adult lifetime. The problem of the woman who must work outside the home but cannot find or afford adequate child care. The problem of women whose need to make their own personal, responsible decisions about whether and when to have children is denied by government intrusion at the national, state, or local level. The growing realization that all of these problems of discrimination and more needed to be directly dealt with by the people most affected by them, by women, along with the cynical denial of the Equal Rights Amendment, has caused women in unprecedented numbers to enter the political arena. In Florida, one of the last states to reject the ERA, more than twice as many women ran for state office as had ever run before. The net result was that the number of women in the state Senate was more than doubled, from 4 to 9, and the number of women in the House increased by 50%. In Illinois, another state that rejected the ERA, also doubled the number of women in the Senate. And both states also turned over the composition of their legislatures from majorities that were anti-ERA to majorities that are now pro-ERA. Other gains were made nationwide, still modest, but keep in mind that most of us who were active in mobilizing the women's vote had only a few months after the end of the ERA campaign to mount a political electoral strategy. We have a year and a half until 1984, and we are using every minute of it. Let me emphasize that in spite of the outrage felt by many women at being cheated of constitutional equality last year, the motivation for the phenomenal entrance of women into politics is not vengeance, since vengeance is negative, wasteful, and ultimately self-destructive. Certainly it is true that there are some legislators whom we feel strongly have proven themselves eminently unfit to represent their female constituencies, and we will work to replace them with people better suited and better qualified. We are, in fact, committed to a nationwide search for a new breed of candidate. And while our emphasis is on increasing the number of women in Congress and the state legislatures, we are looking for men as well, men with a proven commitment to equality. The message women delivered in 1982 clearly got through. It certainly reached the United States Congress, which has enthusiastically reintroduced the Equal Rights Amendment. There are now 240 co-sponsors in the House of Representatives, with 290 votes required for passage, and 58 co-sponsors in the Senate, where 67 votes are needed for passage, and the numbers are growing. We did say last year that the ERA would not go away, that it would remain on the nation's agenda as a high priority item of unfinished business. Well, the impact of the women's vote last November helped to bring it back more quickly than anyone really had anticipated it could. The major difference this time around is political clout, the ability to deliver. The women's vote in 1984 will be bigger and better organized than it was in 1982. And that works in combination with 10 years of experience on the Equal Rights Amendment campaign that has refined and strengthened our organizing, fundraising, and media skills. So we have before us the prospect of both a new ERA and a new era. Together, they will provide us with the tools we need to win the long fight for women's equality, the fight that began in this nation over 135 years ago. And it is fitting that our legacy from the suffragists, both the vote and the Equal Rights Amendment, are the means to accomplish it. The struggle is long, but we have stamina and staying power. It is challenging, but we are determined. And the words of Susan B. Anthony are with us still. Until women have the same rights as men on this great green earth, there will never be another season of silence. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Goldsmith. Today at the City Club, we're listening to the National President of the National Organization for Women, Ms. Judy Goldsmith. In just a few moments, we'll turn to our question period, but first, some announcements. Perhaps a number of you are here today not because you are City Club members, but you're here as a guest because you're especially interested in our speaker of the day. That's fine, and we're glad that you're here. We'd also like you to consider coming back next week and the weeks after that as a regular member. Our dues are moderate. We are completely non-exclusive. As you know, everyone is welcome. Why not stop by our office today for more information about becoming a member of the City Club? We welcome your support. I'd like to add a little personal note to that. That little introduction I was helped with by Alan Davis, who jotted some of those notes down for me, but I'd like to make a short comment, if I may, about a couple of things that happened within the last couple of weeks. One was a call that I received from a gentleman after one of the forums who said that the whole forum must be a planned program because everything seemed to fit together and we weren't getting the kind of controversy that he thought ought to be taking place, and it must all be planned. I assured him it was not. And the thing that we needed was people like himself to join and come down and be a part of the program. He was very interested to know that he could join and that there were no requirements and that he could do so. The second thing that happened was that one of our long and valued members of the City Club, Mort Eikove, who's been with us for many years here as part of our club and a person we value so much, pointed out not long ago that this club really needs to be on the cutting edge of new ideas, challenging new ideas and questions that stimulate debate, and he's right. That's what we're all about here. We encourage responsible speech and responsible and demanding questions. We want to continue to be the place the community treasures for all of its unique qualities as a citadel of free speech and responsible and challenging debate. So we ask you to join us. Support our Forum Foundation. We need every one of you, conservative and liberal, young and old, female and male, white, black, Hispanic, Indian, all other minority persons. With this constant stream of new people, we'll continue to be that special place in this country where people can agree to disagree, where we learn and challenge, where we laugh and join together, all in the furtherance of that very precious American heritage, freedom of speech. That's the only speech I'm going to make during my year as a member here, but I think it's important to be said. Today, as always, we have students with us from area high schools who are participating in our Living Seminars program, which we sponsor in cooperation with the Cleveland Public Schools and Cuyahoga Community College. With us today are students from Collinwood High School, East, Jane Addams, Berea, Independence, Shaw, and Cleveland Heights. Will they stand, please, to receive our welcome? Thank you. They will have their own seminar with Ms. Goldsmith, as you know, right after our forum here today. Next week, our speaker will be the well-known entertainer, Dick Gregory, coming to us not as a comedian, but as a human rights activist very much concerned about hunger, both here in Cleveland and around the world. Next week, Dick Gregory, make your reservations early for this important address. Now for our questions for Ms. Goldsmith. We have two microphones, one in the front with Alan Davis, one in the rear with Robert Conrad. Raise your hand to be recognized. We'll move on to the first question.
Ms. Goldsmith, according to the paper this morning, the Department of Defense, by a little change in language, has defined medical persons, thereby making women eligible for the medical draft. Do you regard that as an advancement for women's rights?
I regard that as the most extraordinary display of hypocrisy I've seen in a long time. That an administration which will not support constitutional equality for women will propose drafting them. This is a bill we have known about for some time, that it was being proposed. It's been being circulated to health personnel around the country. And it proposes drafting health personnel of both sexes. There is one little section in the bill, the draft of the bill, that refers to existing regulations that says remove the word males and insert the word persons. They won't do that in the Constitution. I find it really extraordinary because when we have debated passage of the amendment over the years, one thing the opposition has always said is, if the ERA is passed, then our young women are going to be wrenched from their homes in the arms of their babes and their husbands and sent off into the foxholes where they're going to have to sleep with men or something. And bayonets put into their hands. And we have maintained from the beginning 2 points. First of all, there's absolutely we cannot know for certain whether the ERA would have the effect of requiring a sex-neutral draft, because in a case 2 years ago, Rosker v. Goldberg, a draft registration case, in which the registration was challenged on because it was sex discriminatory, and certainly we cannot deny that the registration is sex discriminatory. Only young men have to be registered. The Supreme Court ruled that women did not have to be included because they said Congress's war powers were supreme and took precedence over any other considerations. There is no reason, therefore, to believe that if the Equal Rights Amendment were in the Constitution, that would make any difference. There is also a provision in the Constitution that says you cannot have involuntary servitude. The draft is most certainly involuntary, and it most certainly is servitude. But that doesn't make any difference. The Constitution also says Congress has the right to raise an army in any manner it sees fit. So we have maintained all along that if the Equal Rights Amendment were in the Constitution, it would not necessarily require a gender-neutral draft. But the other thing we've said is, look, without the Equal Rights Amendment, if you think there is any protection for women against being drafted, you are wrong, because Congress does have the power to draft whoever they want to draft. And if we should reach the point, if we should have a national emergency that required human resources that happen to be identifiably female, and that is necessary to the defense of the nation, to the pursuit of the military program, don't think that women are going to be protected from the draft. And here it is.
Madam President, I'd like to preface my question by saying that I'm in the field of electronic engineering, the so-called high-tech that is completely dominated by men, more than 90%. To what extent are high school counselors starting to move women to select fields like this? If they do not, in the next century, men are going to make a quantum leap. You may never catch up. And if you do enter the field as operators and processors, each new type of device has a higher form of intelligence, and you can lose your job.
Well, I appreciate your sensitivity to that problem and would welcome your involvement in getting the message through to high school career counselors that, in fact, the possibilities of careers in that area must be made clearly and equitably available to young women and to young men. That certainly has been one of the biggest drawbacks. We've made some advances in this area. We have raised some consciousnesses, but there still is too much of a block that exists in our minds that somehow certain career areas are less appropriate for women or are less appropriate for men. And in the process, we hamper both sexes. And in the process, we do not develop our full human potential, which exists in both sexes. So we limit ourselves. We ultimately hurt the nation and our progress in every area of human endeavor.
Yes, I've always felt that that men have potentially a great contribution to make to equality of the sexes, and also a lot to gain by achieving that. And yet, I think men are inhibited in many cases from doing all that they might be able to do because they feel maybe they'd be considered by women, perhaps, as butting in on business which, you know, is better left to women. So I was wondering if you'd be able to share your thoughts on precisely what the areas of the greatest contribution, say, that men can make to that goal, and also what men would have to gain, you know, by having it.
Good. One of the reasons we're a little touchy about the name of our organization is that, you know, it frequently gets called the National Organization of Women. And we correct people and say, no, it's the National Organization for Women, because it's an important distinction to us. It's not an organization of women, although certainly women predominate. It is an organization that works for women, for equality. But we have men in the membership in, I'm happy to say, increasing numbers, and we think that is the way it ought to be. Indeed, what we are doing is ultimately going to benefit all of us. I mean, realistically, you cannot win equality, you cannot win justice, you cannot win something for one segment of humanity only without affecting all of us. We have, and you may have seen a television advertising campaign for the organization, and the tagline at the end of it is, we don't expect every woman in the country to join now, just the 100 million who are discriminated against and the men who care. We know that it has to be all of us. We understand, too, that at this point, historically, it is, for us to work together, is not necessarily easy. That maybe men are a little uncomfortable approaching us to develop a working relationship in feminist activities. Women may be a little tentative and a little nervous about the same kind of thing, because unfortunately, we've not been allowed as males and females to develop the kinds of working relationships that would make it comfortable to do that. It is one of the worst casualties, I think, of the battle between the sexes, which I hope someday we can get, you know, we can put behind us as a destructive and anti-human kind of attitude. that we've not been able to approach each other, male and female, as people with common concerns who would like to work together and like to accomplish some things together. But we're doing what we can, and I hope that we're going to be able to continue to do more.
Ms. Goldsmith, many of us who are concerned with civil rights for all of our citizens are becoming very concerned about what policies your organization will be developing in dealing with a problem which we had a good indication in Cleveland recently of what is happening, and that is that our city council refused to recognize women business people as a minority group. And we see this as a growing fractionizing of the whole movement, and that it's going to be split into a black and white issue. And we're very concerned. I'm wondering how your organization is dealing with this.
Ultimately, however, I understand what developed was the passage of the minority bill with a commitment to have one for women as well, for inclusion in business contracts, which is a good way to have it happen. What is not good is to have us, or for us to perceive ourselves, that is to say, women's rights groups, civil rights groups, various segments of the population and the human rights community, to see us pitted against each other as if we are the enemy, or we are each other's enemy, when so clearly we are not. We are united in virtually all of our goals. We represent constituencies that are commonly and generally under attack by repressive policies of a repressive administration. If we are not reinforcing each other and supporting each other in our mutual goals, then we are failing to take advantage of a historic opportunity to do that. Because just as men and women cannot do it separately, blacks and whites and Hispanics cannot do it separately, none of us can. If we do not one of these days reach the point where we understand that what we have in common as human beings is so much more significant than the irrelevancies that separate us, we will have suffered a great loss. But I am also enough of an optimist to think that that won't happen and that we will be able to work together.
Ms. Goldsmith, with regard to the anti-feminist pressures which your group is fighting, do you think the recent hullabaloo over Ann Burford and Rita Lavelle will possibly be turned and used against you?
I think not. I don't think that people, I mean, if we're talking in the sense of there being representative of women and having been involved in something negative that will reflect, I don't think that's the case. We have also, among other things, never maintained that women were inherently more scrupulous or highly principled than men. Feminism really doesn't mean anything unless you accept as a basic principle that human beings are human beings, and that good people and bad people come in a wonderful variety of sexes, colors, religions, everything, heights, whatever. That I don't think people will make that connection, and I don't think either that they will regard it as any more significant, the resignations of Lavelle and Burford, as being any more significant a commentary on either the state of the movement or the Reagan administration's attitude toward it than they have regarded the appointment of women such as Peggy Heckler and Elizabeth Dole to cabinet positions.
Ms. Goldsmith, my question is, there are two national women's political groups, the NOW and the National Women's Political Caucus. The caucus has had from its inception the goal of appointment and election of women to political office, and it seems as if NOW only because of its valiant effort in seeking the passage of the ERA, has realized the importance of women in the political process and has formed a political action committee and is now endorsing candidates and raising money. My question is, do you see the National Women's Political Caucus and now joining into one group eventually, or at least working in coordination? And if not, and we do have two national women's political organizations, what are the benefits and detriments to having two organizations?
I don't think we can have too many organizations working on the issue of political involvement for women. As a matter of fact, when I came here yesterday, I left a meeting of the heads of 40 organizations, primarily women's organizations, but also allied organizations, who are laying out and developing a cooperative plan to involve women in the voting process, the electoral process next year. We work on almost a daily basis together, and it is a good mutual working relationship. We don't necessarily agree on everything. For example, we took different stands on some candidates in the 1982 elections, but we don't feel that we have to. We have different organizational priorities and agendas, and that's fine. But that does not interfere with the working relationship. There has been, I think we have to some extent suffered from a misconception over the years that if women disagree, they're not getting along together. And everyone says, see, women can't work together. Well, we don't have to agree. And it is something that we are only now, I think, beginning to get comfortable with. But to understand that there are many areas where we can support each other and reinforce each other's goals while still maintaining our organizational identity and integrity.
Ms. Goldsmith, this could be a follow-up to the last question. Could you tell us about NOW's role in 3 recent elections, the Fenwick-Lautenberg election in New Jersey, the Frank Heckler election, and also the Washington, Byrne, and Daley election in Chicago?
Okay. Yes. In the Fenwick-Lautenberg race, it was one of the more difficult decisions that we had to make. Millicent Fenwick is a legendary figure. She was strongly supportive on the Equal Rights Amendment. And the situation that existed when New Jersey Now Political Action Committee made its endorsement was one that they found very painful. The reason that they opted to support Frank Lautenberg over Millicent Fenwick was, more than anything else, economic. New Jersey is one of the states that has been particularly hard hit by the present economic conditions. And wherever people are economically devastated, women are hit even harder. So they were profoundly distressed by the fact that Millicent Fenwick was, at least to a greater degree than they were comfortable with, supportive of Ronald Reagan's economic policies. They were profoundly troubled with that. There was another consideration, that having Millicent Fenwick in the Senate would have added another Republican to Republican control of the Senate. Now, again, that must not be interpreted as indicating a fundamentally anti-Republican attitude, because it does not. What it reflects is a simple, pragmatic reality that Republican control of the Senate at this point means that high-level leadership positions, committee chairs, are held by such outstanding champions of women's rights and human rights as Strom Thurmond, Jesse Helms, Orrin Hatch, Jake Garn. It is a practical political necessity. To that extent, to not take party into consideration is naive and irresponsible. So we did take that into consideration, and the result was that political decision. With Peggy Heckler and Barney Frank, it was again a difficult situation. She had been supportive on the Equal Rights Amendment, and we would not have had to make the choice except that in redistricting they ended up in the same district. Had it not been the case, we would most certainly have supported her. However, we were now faced with a situation in which we had a woman who was good on ERA, but not good on matters of reproductive choice, and again, very consistently a supporter of Ronald Reagan's economic policies, up against a man who was on our issues perfect and a strong supporter. Now, one of the problems we ran into here was that we got some bad press before the elections because we supported some men over women. In the congressional races, out of 109 races that we were involved in, we only supported men over women in 5. But they got a great deal of coverage, and some of them, of course, like Fenwick and Heckler, were very high visibility ones. But what we said in response to that is that the National Organization for Women is not sexist. We will not discriminate on the basis of sex. We do not believe that all women are automatically better than all men. And we're not going to just turn discrimination upside down. Then we haven't gained anything. And if we have a race in which a male candidate is clearly superior to the female candidate in that particular race, then we will support him. So it was, instead of being then damned for being sexist, if we had done that, we were damned for betraying our mission of trying to get more women involved. But one more reality about those races is that congressionally, only 5% of the candidates for Congress were women, although 20% of our PAC money went to women. So that's something that we're working on for next time, too. Let me just address the Washington-Byrne race. This was another one at the same level of difficulty of choice. And the Chicago Now Political Action Committee endorsed Jane Byrne while indicating that we had extremely high regard for Harold Washington and had hoped that we would be able to have him continue in Congress because he is good on our issues. But we also have an organizational policy of getting more women involved in politics, and this was an incumbent mayor, a woman, who was excellent on our issues and who gave us support on the Equal Rights Amendment like almost no other politician ever has. And for that, and in order to maintain our organizational integrity, we supported her. The day after the election, the Chicago Now chapter immediately endorsed Harold Washington for the general election, contacted him, and offered our support for anything we could do to help him.
It's awkward to continue the male dominance of this question period. But I wanted to see if I could find out more about your attitude towards sexual neutrality in the insurance field. Women under 25, of course, as my daughters do, have a great advantage in car insurance rates. Women have traditionally had lower life insurance premiums. You indicated in your talk that women come out a net deficit of $16,000 per lifetime. Do you advocate neutrality, sexual neutrality in insurance benefits and rates? And if so, do you advocate this in areas where women now have a distinct advantage?
I do indeed advocate that, and I'm a little concerned looking at the minutes that are left on the clock because this is not one of those little quick, easy ones. But let me try to give you the basic points. The insurance industry is, we said that we have gotten better at using media. They're very good at media, and they've gotten the message across. And the message they've gotten across is that if we have gender-neutral rates in insurance, women are going to suffer because now women pay a lot less for auto insurance, a lot less for life, and therefore if we turn that around, automatically that means it's going to cost women a lot more. Those are not the realities of the issue of sex discrimination in insurance, but they're good press people. They've gotten the line out. The reality is that if you look at all major types of insurance that people get in the course of their lifetime, auto, life, health, disability, pensions, and annuities, women pay up to twice as much for health insurance, which virtually all women have to have, and that does not include pregnancy-related or reproductive health-related matters, while most policies do include, for men at no additional cost, vasectomies, hair transplants, critically important, some health, sports-related injuries. In disability, women pay 25% to 150% more. In pensions and annuities that are desperately needed for in our older years when we need something to live on, women are again severely disadvantaged on the theory that we live longer. Now, we only 16% of women live longer than men, but because of that, 100% of women are disadvantaged. So if a woman starts collecting her pension and she's supposed to live 9 more years and she only lives 3, so she never collects, I mean, well, that's unfortunate. But that is a reality that women live with. If women are getting lesser monthly payments because they're female, their rent isn't reduced, the food they buy isn't reduced, the heat they have to pay for isn't reduced, but they are disadvantaged because of that. Incidentally, while women are given a 6 to 9 year disadvantage on annuities, when you turn it around to the life insurance side where we get an alleged break, we only get a 3-year advantage. Now, it's interesting. If we want to talk about being equitable, maybe we ought to talk about that. But also, only 20% of life insurance presently in force is held by women. So we're talking about a fairly small number. And interestingly, because you pay less per $1,000 of insurance, the larger policy you buy, and because of the wage gap, the 59-cent wage gap, women can only afford to buy smaller policies. So dollar for dollar, they are paying more on life insurance. And one final thing on life is that because men allegedly have to pay more for life insurance, if they therefore have to buy smaller policies, who does that ultimately hurt? Not him. The women and children. In auto, one of the problems with the insurance industry and the perceptions of differences based on sex is that they absolutely depend upon people's buying the stereotypes. Oh, women live longer. Of course, we know that. We all know that young men are wild, crazy animals who go out and crack up cars. Of course, they should pay more for auto insurance. When we challenge those rates in the courts in Pennsylvania, the insurance company involved, and you can be sure that the insurance industry was interested in this case, could not produce statistics that indicated that, in fact, young men had higher accident rates. But insofar as they had statistics at all, they indicated that women are better drivers throughout our driving lifetime. So then why does the break for women end at age 21 and decrease thereafter to age 25 or 30? Our statistics have indicated, as I mentioned in my remarks, that over the course of a lifetime, women pay an average of $16,000 more than men do for those basic kinds of insurance.
Two-part question, you may have answered it. Is there a relationship, a working relationship between now and the League of Women Voters? And you have mentioned issues frequently today. What issues is now involved with, say, on housing, such as housing for the aged, Social Security, and that type of thing?
Yes, we work with the League of Women Voters, with Business and Professional Women, with the American Association of University Women, with the caucus. I mean, we all work together. It is not precisely what I would call a coalition, but it is a cooperative working relationship, and I think the quality of it and the effectiveness of it is improving. We are working on our political development project to involve more women in politics and more supporters of equality. We are working on the new campaign for the Equal Rights Amendment. We are working on a considerable range of economic issues that have such direct impact on women, on Social Security, which was originally constructed on sex discriminatory assumptions, so that women make about 60% of what men get in Social Security benefits. And most women who are on Social Security are living beneath the poverty line. Child care is becoming an increasingly economic issue, because since the majority of women, the vast majority of women who work outside the home must do so. For economic survival, it is critical that they have access to good, responsible child care for their children. Insurance, of course, is another economic area, and there is a wide range. We are concerned as well with initiatives in the area of reproductive rights coming from the opposition to that issue that would deny women the right, that would force governmental determination as an element in their decisions as to whether they will have children. We find that an intolerable intrusion in private life and are fighting that at the national level and at the state and local levels. So there's a considerable range, and there is more as well, but those are the major focuses.
Mrs. Goldsmith, I would like to know, how do a male go by getting into your union?
Well, we have chapters all over the country, some 800. And if you can get in touch with your local chapter, we are usually in the telephone book, we would be delighted to have you join us.
And particularly NOW, been so slow to realize the power that we have. That is either the support or the antagonism of personal enemies in government. All you have to do is approach the person and demand his opinion in regard to support or opposition. Support him with all your time, thought, and money if he's for you. If he isn't, cut his political throat. He'll tremble in his boots.
You are absolutely right, and I yield to the respected voice of experience.
Many people, when I mention about ERA, say that it's redundant, that we already have all these, and that's the argument that I receive a lot. And I say that the states vary so much. Do you find that's very true in Utah, perhaps, or Idaho, that we don't have what we have in Ohio, as far as
there is great disparity from state to state, and if we had everything we needed, we wouldn't be in the condition we're in, and women would not make up 2/3 of the poor, and we wouldn't be talking about the feminization of poverty, and we wouldn't have the problems we still have nationwide in varying degrees in every state. The Equal Rights Amendment is definitely the major tool we need in order to achieve that.
Thank you, Ms. Goldsmith. Thank you for joining us. Our City Club Forum is adjourned.